Safety warning to begin, you're all going to have very tired and sore necks because I walk around all over the place. And my apologies for that, but podiums and I just do not get along. Good afternoon, everyone. I cannot tell you how happy I am to be here this afternoon. Before I begin and say anything, thank you very much to each and every one of you for being here. It shows a commitment to community. It shows a desire to chip in. It shows a desire to better understand and work towards vibrancy and a better community for all. It's not everybody who's willing to step up and play those sorts of roles. And the fact that you are is very powerful indeed, and I am certainly most grateful. I've always said that a city is not run by a small handful of people known as a mayor and council, or a slightly bigger handful of people known as an administration. It's run by the community at large. And each of you play a role in that, and certainly being at events like this and being engaged is a big part of that. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Let's talk about growth. Boy, are you in trouble. When I was asked to give this session and they called it, Let's Talk About Growth, strap in, we could be here till midnight talking about growth, the importance of it, and everything else. I'm going to try very hard to keep my comments to about 20 minutes so that we have time for questions. Because quite frankly, I could bend your ear off talking to you about what I would want to talk about, but I would much prefer talking about what you want to talk about. So please give some thought to some questions, because I'm going to try to leave some time at the end to do that. By way of introduction, at a chamber luncheon in the fall, I gave quite a bit of information about why I thought growth was so important. I am not going to redo that today, but I will highlight the key points. Why do we need to grow? The statistics are very telling. If you take a look at the last two census, a 5-year period, in that 5 years, the city of Thunder Bay grew by 1.3% population. And that's city and surrounding area. Doesn't sound half bad until you take a look at the national average, which was 5.2%, 4 times more. Or the Ontario average, which was 5.8%, 4.5 times more. So a bit of a rhetorical question for you. If you're a business looking to expand into a new geographic area, or a new business trying to establish yourself, are you going to establish yourself in a city that's thriving with a growth of 5.5%? Or are you going to come to Thunder Bay that's growing at 1.3% over a 5-year period? Unless your business has no concern about workforce or doesn't interact with local population, the answer to that question is pretty obvious. We need to grow our population to entice business to be here. Because we have not grown as much as we should in terms of population, and we are not receding and we are not declining, but we haven't grown enough, it's led to a real challenge with our revenue base. You all know that we get the majority of our revenue to run this city through property tax. In the last 10 years, our property tax revenue has increased by 7.8%. That's cumulative. It's kind of like compound interest. It builds on itself. 7.8%. That sounds okay until you consider inflation. Inflation in the same time frame grew by approximately 32%, 4 times faster than we did. So it's not a question of doing more. It's a question of how do we manage to keep our head above water when we are falling behind inflation so dramatically. So what do? We shave the ice cube in terms of the services and the programs that we provide. And we raise property tax rates and user rates more than people would want. It's not a recipe for success. I think we all want to be in a thriving community that provides all the services we could possibly want. The solution to that is growth. Not stupid growth. Not growth at all costs. Not crazy percentages of growth like we see in some places in Southern Ontario where communities are literally going, stop, no more, don't want it. We don't have the power, we don't have the water, we don't have the housing, we have lineups everywhere, too much. We're not talking about that. we're talking about smart growth. And I'll speak more about smart growth in a second. Do I believe it's possible? Absolutely. I would not have come here if I didn't believe that. We are poised for that growth. And happy to talk about that more during the question period. We have compelling value propositions. Whether you're a resident or a potential resident, potential business here, we have a story to tell. And we can do that. So, how do we get there from here? There's been lots of great initiatives done in the past. I'm not being critical of the past at all. There's been some good stuff done, just not enough of it. So we need a plan. We need a smart growth action plan. Not another strategy that I could write overnight by Googling growth strategies on the internet, and 100 of them would come up and I could change the name from whatever to City of Thunder Bay and it would be good. I'm not talking about a strategy. I'm talking about concrete actions germane to the city. Who writes that plan? Not administration. All right? We created a task force loaded with people from business, from academia, and from the various associations such as the BIAs, the Chamber of Commerce, this fine group, the CEDC. We got together. This task force is about 25 people. You saw some of them stand up during the introductions. And we sat down, rolled up our sleeves, and developed, or are developing, a smart growth action plan. That was presented to council as an information session, draft form, about a week ago. We're going to spend a whole bunch of time and go back to council in the fall to get it approved. When we talk about that strong foundation for growth, it's not all bad. The sky is not falling here in Thunder Bay, and I wish to God people would speak more positively about this city. I love this city. And those who speak negatively, I got to ask, why don't you? There's so much possibility here. And we're starting to move the things along already. I'm not going to talk about any of this. People at the back of the room can't see it. But this is some of the stuff that has happened in the last year or so. Things that are setting us up, creating that foundation for growth as we move forward. It's major projects like the Victoriaville reconstruction that we're going to do, to the one-stop development shop, to achieving all of our housing targets for last year. One of the very few communities in Ontario that achieved their housing targets last year, both the federally set and provincially set targets. What does that mean? Well, first of all, we got a whole bunch more housing. Secondly, our funding from those two levels of government is now guaranteed for 2025 because we achieved our 2024 targets. So things are already happening. But what do we want to do? We want to put all of that on steroids, if you will. We want to do more. So we're developing the Smart Growth Action Plan. It's got a vision and a mission that I'm not really going to talk about. I'm not going to show you them here today. I'm going to say this, though. A big emphasis in the vision and mission is this notion of community, of everybody needs to thrive, not just select portions. I firmly believe that if this city was to prosper and leave behind its most disadvantaged, we have still failed. So the vision and the mission speaks to that. We have set targets, and we'll speak about that, key considerations, etc., as we go through this. It's a smart growth action plan. We have to make best use of land, best use of resources, best use of money, and it has to be carefully managed. As tough as it is to develop growth, what's even harder is to manage that growth and make sure that it's properly done. Targets. Here they are in the plan. What we believe is that our key measure, the one measure above all others, is the property tax base increase. That's where we get most of our revenue. And it's a good measure of whether we're growing. We're setting a target of 3%. Why 3%? Pretty simple. Inflation in Canada is between 1.5% and 2.5%, somewhere in there on an annual basis. At 3%, that means that every year we have just a little bit more money than inflationary pressures, which means we're able to do just a little bit more every year. And best practices will tell you that if you go much higher than 3%, then you start tripping into problems of managing that growth. So 3% is the target. Then most economists will tell you, and there's been lots of research done on this, that if you want 3% growth in your property tax base, you're talking about a 1% annual population growth. So there it is. These targets are ambitious. Our annual property tax base growth rate right now hovers in about the 0.75% range. Every year is different, but on average. Our population growth is about 0.3% per year. So we've got some work to do to be sure, but this is achievable. The Smart Growth Action Plan also says, regardless of whatever actions you want to do, there are 5 key considerations that apply to all actions. Kind of a litmus test. Does the action make sense? Financially sustainable. Pie in the sky, we want an event center that can house 25,000 people and mass conferences is not achievable financially. And even if it was, even if you could build it, you could never operate it because of the losses it would incur. So financial sustainability is important. Inclusiveness. I've already spoken about the importance of community. Environmental stewardship. This is not growth at all costs. Because although we could pat ourselves on the back and say we've achieved 3%, what's the impact of poorly designed, poorly constructed, not environmentally friendly stuff 10 and 20 years from now? So environmental stewardship is a litmus test or a lens through which we look at all the action items. We got to embrace innovation. We got to accept change, which also means that we've got to embrace risk management and not risk avoidance. We avoid doing a lot of things because there's risk. That's problematic for growth. Instead of avoiding things because there's risk, you got to figure out ways to manage the risk so that you can still do the thing, whatever that thing is. So those are kind of the lenses through which we look at all the action items. The action items were then divided into 3 key pillars, or focus areas, or any other term you want to put on it. First is readiness. Second is attraction. And third is talent. And let me give you a couple of examples of what we're thinking of in each of these. Readiness. We don't have enough land that is ready for businesses to establish themselves on. We have businesses that come into the CEDC, and I know the CEO of the CEDC is here today. We have businesses that come into the CEDC and say, we'd like to do A, B, and C. What land do you have available for us? Well, the tap dancing kind of starts. We don't have that shovel-ready land. We don't have an industrial park. We have a commercial park. We don't have an industrial park. Lack of a shovel-ready land is a true limiter to attracting business. We have to continue to make sure our housing remains affordable. So the push on housing needs to continue, even if we believe we have enough housing for everybody. Even at that point, we still need to push it. As we grow, what about our water supply? What about our road network? What about the traffic jams in Thunder Bay? I've lived all over the world. Ladies and gentlemen, there is not a traffic challenge in Thunder Bay. But there could be. So we got to be looking at things like that. Turning to attraction, we don't have a good reputation worldwide, nationally. We don't, let's face it. When I was, and I think I said this in my first presentation, I'm repeating myself. When I told my friends, all of which are pretty well informed, that I was considering coming to Thunder Bay, most of them in the first couple sentences said, why would you want to do that? We don't have a good reputation. That affects growth. And there's all sorts of things that we can do to be more attractive to the people that we're trying to court. You see a bit of a list here on some of those things, and I'm not going, in the interest of time, I'm not going to explain any of them, but certainly happy to take any questions. This is not the entirety of the action items. There are right now, the previous slide said 87. My team got cute and combined two of them together, so there's actually 86, not 87 right now. But this is just a smattering to give you an idea of what's in the attraction pillar. And then the third one is talent. This is a problem nationwide. And we got to figure out a way to be just a little bit better than everybody else in terms of talent attraction and I would argue more importantly, talent retention. And we've got to figure this out, and that's why there's an entire pillar within the Smart Growth Action Plan on the challenges associated with talent. We will never solve our problem. We'll always be saying that we're short. We just need to be a little bit less short than everybody else to get that competitive advantage. So those are the three pillars. I want to back up and say that those pillars result in this, the 87 smart action items. We're not done. We've already identified more that needs to go onto the plan. 87 sounds like a lot. Remember, please, that it's a 10-year plan. So that really averages about 9 a year. All right, it's not going to work that way, obviously. But my point is we're not aiming too high. And all of the action items are going through another lens called the SMART acronym. Kind of lines up right with the Smart Growth Action Plan. Every action item must be specific, no generalities, measurable, achievable, no pie in the sky thinking, relevant, there's lots of good ideas out there, but will they actually contribute to growth, and time bound. So not only will the plan be smart, every action item will be put through a lens, a smart lens. And the last part that I don't have any slides on, but I want to highlight is we have to have a very robust performance measurement architecture framework developed and put into this plan so that we can figure out how we're doing and how we need to adjust. So, next steps. We're at the point now of public engagement. We're getting it out beyond the task force. It's on our Get Involved website, lots of information, and then a survey there. We're inviting people to email us. We've created an email address for it. And through the summer months, we're going to continue with the research, the information gathering, the analysis, to make sure that we have the right action items within the plan. That plan will be presented to Council in its entirety in early October. As a first report, they won't decide on it just there. They'll go away and have time to reflect on it. And it will be presented at the exact same time as the CEDC presents their strategic assessment and their strategy for moving forward, so that we can show that we are all aligned, all working on the same roadmap. And then even after Council approves the plan, we're into implementation. That task force growth that I already described to you, I've asked them to volunteer and step up and stay. And they're going to be our sounding board through implementation to see how we adjust. That's it for the Smart Growth Action Plan. This slide has no content, intentionally so. I will just say that it's not just growth that we are working on within the city. There's all sorts of other stuff. A lot of it related to growth, I grant you. But it's captured within the city manager's work plan that is on our website, that has been briefed to Council. But my point, and the only reason this slide is up here today, is if you have any questions on anything else, happy to deal with those as well during the question period. I'm done talking about what I want to talk about. Let's talk about what you want to talk about. Questions? And before I do that, I will just mention that on your way out the door, there's a document there that highlights the 86 action items we have so far, and you can grab it on your way out. It's not private, it's not privileged information at this point. It's been introduced into the public domain. You can grab a copy and read at your leisure, and feel free to provide feedback. Questions, comments, observations? I'll come running to you with the microphone.
Sorry.
Thank you. I watch the council meetings on Monday night, which can be a bit of a torture because our council sometimes is having trouble making decisions. So my question is, where does council fit in this? Because they've got to all be on the same page and moving it forward and promoting it to the rest of us.
Thanks for the question. Listen, first of all, an editorial note. The decisions that are put before council are tough. And they're deciding the future of this community, so I'm not at all surprised that sometimes they have difficulty making decisions. They're tough decisions to make. As for your specific question, the Smart Growth Action Plan will be put before council in the fall for their endorsement. Once they endorse it, once they approve it, it becomes our marching orders. So those 87, probably by then 95 action items, we got to get on with it. And it'll be my role as city manager, working with all of our community partners, to figure out how we're going to achieve all those action items. We will have the support of council when they vote in favor of it in the fall. I'm assuming they will vote in favor, but it's entirely their choice at that time. What else? Please.
Thank you, sir. I have a question, and I'm from Lakehead University MBA. So you have mentioned there are smart initiatives to increase population and to try to put more talents here. But for now, I see maybe for the secondary master like I and my classmates, maybe they find kind of few opportunities here, but we do want to stay here to be contribute to our community. So I want to hear you, sir, how to achieve this goal. Thank you.
Sure. So you're not going to be able to convince people to come to Thunder Bay in mass numbers just because it's a great place to live. It also has to be a place where they can get a good job. Now, I believe the modern family, yes, job is still number one priority, but they do look at those other things. But they still need the job. We have a challenge right now in Thunder Bay in terms of the amount of industrial and commercial undertakings we have in the city. From a property tax base of view, 84% of our current property tax base is residential, and only 16 is industrial and commercial. That has nothing to do with tax rate. That's the reality that we don't have the industry and the commercial undertakings that we used to have in this city. Look at the vacant grains elevators, and that's a visible icon of that reality. It's truly ironic because we're still regarded as a blue-collar town. We don't have a whole lot of blue collar left. We need to, and within the action plan, we need to have all sorts of initiatives to improve the amount, the number of businesses that we have in this city, industrial or commercial or retail. If we do that, then jobs come with it. And it's through those jobs that people will want to come here or will want to stay here. So as much as population growth is important, we can't get there from here without having significant growth in our industrial and commercial base. Now, when I say significant, I'm not talking about taking that number, which is at 16% now, and putting it to 35%. There's no community in Canada that has those sorts of numbers. But you move it just a little bit, a couple percentage points. It is fascinating to see, and lots of research on this, fascinating to see how many jobs that creates and how much easier it is to grow. So again, very achievable. We just need to put the time and effort into doing it. The reality, though, is that this doesn't happen overnight. You court a big business, they agree to come to Thunder Bay. They're probably not in Thunder Bay, established and running for 3, 4, 5 years. So that's why, and hopefully you noticed it on the slide with the targets, we're not saying 3% by next year. We're saying 3% by the end of the 10-year plan because it takes time to move that needle. Next. Thanks, Charles.
Yeah, I can project, but it's okay. It is a rule of thumb in economic development that has been researched a lot of times, because I appreciate that you've got attraction on there, and I think it's an important component. But a rule of thumb is that 80% of your new jobs and your investment come from the businesses that are already here. So that, because that is a long-standing one, and one that I have worked with in our profession, that's what we do. I'm interested to find out what we might be doing to try to encourage and to capture those growth opportunities from our existing business community.
Sure. So first of all, I'll agree that we have to put as much, if not more, focus on our existing businesses than new folks coming to town. I don't disagree with that premise at all. In fact, the task force has identified that we might still be a little bit light in terms of action items in that regard, and we've identified it as work to be done. That said, there are some cool things within the action items right now. For example, we just had council approve the Business Community Improvement Plan, which provides incentives to people who want to, yes, come here and build, but also those who are already here who want to expand. It's not just for new business. There's things like that within the action plan. We need to take a look at incentivizing businesses that are here. We need to look at small things like, and you know, some people say council has changed their mind and here we go again when it comes to parking. No, we're now looking at parking in the cores from a growth lens, which we didn't look at it that way before. We looked at it through a revenue lens before. We're now looking at it through a growth lens, and this city can now stand up and say, come to our cores, no parking charges. Find me another city of 100,000 in Canada that can say that. We've held the line on development charges. You want to build a new building as a business that exists in this city? We're not going to charge you any development charges. We are the only city left in Ontario of 100,000 or more that does not have development charges. And in the plan, we say we'll hold the line for a while. I don't know how long, but we're going to hold the line for now. That's huge. That the average development charge on a new home in Ontario right now, so on top of the permit fees that you may have to pay and the cost for your architect and for your builder to build it and all that, the average home in Ontario now pays $100,000 to the municipality in development charges, up front, as part of the cost of building their home. We don't have any of that. And if you want to talk about business opportunities where it's $1 million or $2 or $3 billion investment, build, we don't have development charges on that either. So there are opportunities for businesses in town. I think we can do a little bit more. What else?
I have a follow-up question to the answer that you just gave, and I guess the question is why don't we have those charges? But that just came to mind as I was sitting here listening to that. The question I have is, from last year's talk you were here, I was so impressed I wanted to come back this year just to hear where we were.
Uh-oh.
One thing that really stood out to me, and I wrote it down, was that in other places in Ontario, there's a halt on letting people into the province. I seem to recall you saying that in Southern Ontario, they're not letting people in, they're stopping the growth. And you wanted to make sure Thunder Bay got on that list of, we want them. And I'm just wondering, is there been any movement on that, or is that part of the 86?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to deal with your first question of why don't we have development charges. We need to incentivize business to come here. It's plain and simple. And no development charges is a huge incentive. I mean, you take a look at our other incentive plans, you're talking about, yeah, maybe they can get $25,000 out of us, or $30,000 for this, or $15,000 for that. You're doing $1 million build in other places in Ontario, we're giving you an incentive of easily a couple $100,000 by not putting development charges on you. So we need that to incentivize growth. That's the short answer to why don't we right now. How long we can hold that line before we start having to have that money, I don't know. We're going to give fair warning to everybody, take advantage of it now because it may not always be this way. And that warning in and of itself might help with growth.
Free membership, right?
Yeah, free membership now, pay later. What was your question again? Oh, stopping growth. Yeah, so listen, you can't really stop growth. You can't go against provincial rules, but there certainly is a hesitancy down south to slow down growth. It's too much. They can't handle it. You know, literally, they're running out of water. They're running out of houses, etc. I will say that when we talk about the attraction and the talent pillars within this action plan, we're not focused just on newcomers to Canada. We're focused on getting people from the rest of Canada. And I think the action items speak to that when you take a look at them all. I actually think that because there's now limits on how much immigration the federal government is going to allow, I actually think that our better market is going after those who are frustrated with where they currently live or work in Canada. And there's a lot of work that can be done on that. And I think the growth assessment that the CEDC is working on right now is going to bring that to bear to a degree. Let's focus on other markets in Canada as much as we focus on immigration, because the immigration pool is limited by law. What else? Please.
So I understand you want to bring business here, and that's good. That's wonderful. But where are we going to house all these people when Thunder Bay doesn't have affordable housing?
Well, the first part of this, you're not going to like what I say. Well, hopefully the second part you will. Our housing is already affordable compared to the rest of the country. Okay? And that's the reality. Rent is a different issue.
I'm talking rent.
Yeah. So our rental market is comparable to everywhere else, and that's bad. The answer to that is build, build, and build. It's simple supply and demand, economics 101. If we have enough inventory here, prices will naturally either go down or at least stay constant. So we have a mayor's task force on housing. We have our commitments within the Housing Accelerator Fund and the Building Faster Fund from the province on targets we have to build. We have to build all of that and more. We've identified, and the details are in the plan, I didn't show them here, how many houses we need to build to stay on top of this for the 3% growth. And we absolutely need to achieve those goals, because otherwise we will end up in situations like Kitchener-Waterloo. I have 4 sons. One of them is in Kitchener-Waterloo. First of my sons has managed to buy a house because he had the down payment. Single family home, very small, 900 square feet or so, built in the 1960s, hasn't been touched since, so it's a fixer-upper. So we're talking about a fixer-upper, small bungalow, and he paid $750,000 for that house. We can't get there. So we're going to have to continue the effort on building housing. We reached our targets last year. Pretty sure we'll reach our targets for this year, and we got to keep going. The answer is build more. And it's developers who build. We just need to make it easy for them to achieve that. Municipalities don't build homes, or certainly this city doesn't. Any other questions? Oh.
John, maybe with your background in military, you could weigh in on this one. So Canada has just announced an increase in their defense spending. I just wondered how prepared Thunder Bay would be to develop icebreakers or something like that.
Thanks very much for dragging me back a couple decades. I think there is an opportunity there. I don't want to overstate it. But we are in the center of Canada. We are a logistics node. We have good road. We have excellent rail. We're at the headway of the St. Lawrence. All of that can be valuable to the military when they're taking a look at their future plans, which I don't have any details on. So I think there is a play that can be made there to perhaps become a logistics hub more than we are now. And with that would come jobs and infrastructure build, et cetera. But even at the 5% that has been committed to, and only 3.5% goes to the military, the other 1.5% goes to improving ports, rail networks, et cetera. So that 1.5% I think we can tap into here because the Prime Minister has announced he wants to improve road, rail, and port networks as part of that 5%. And within that 3.5, I'm a realist. We're not going to get a big military base here. We're not going to get a whole bunch of regular force units here. That's not in the plan. But we can become a logistics hub, and we can work on that part of it. What's next? Any others?
So there's a lot of uncertainty with the levels of immigration in the future right now, and we know that almost all of Canada's population growth comes from immigration. So say in 5 years from now, this plan is very growth through population looking forward, but say in 5 years, Thunder Bay has population decline, what's the plan for that contingency? Thank you.
Well, you'll forgive me when I say I'm not going to plan for that right now. Listen, you're absolutely right. Canada as a whole has to rely on immigration for its growth. Again, our plan for population growth is centered on immigration to a degree, and then robbing from the rest of Canada for the rest of it. What happens if the immigration pipeline gets turned off in the future? I would be very surprised if any federal government went down that road. I think everybody recognizes the importance of population to financial and community success. If you take a look at our history, sometimes we've opened the doors and let many in, sometimes we slow it down a little bit, but we are a nation of migrants, and I just don't see any federal government walking away from that. If they do, then like we do with everything else, we pivot. But I'm not wasting any time thinking about that now. We're going to grow our population. That's our focus right now. Charlotte, are you allowed to ask questions at these things?
As soon as you give me the mic, I can do whatever. So last fall, the city, under John's leadership, hosted a developers half-day conference. Some of the ideas that came out of that were the community-wide community improvement plan and the one-stop development shop. Both of those things have happened, so kudos to admin and to council for approving that. But for those in the room who don't know what those are, could you dig into that a little bit? Because that's a pretty big change from the way we've done things before.
Sure. So on those two specifically, and there were many other suggestions at that developers workshop in terms of processes and all that have also been embraced and changed. But those are two big ones. And by the way, I will say we're doing another development workshop in the future. The growth team doesn't know this yet, but we're doing another one. The one-stop development shop, I'll start with that. People say it's tough to build things. There's so many rules, there's so many requirements between stormwater management and environmental plans and traffic studies and everything else. We need help. And right now the help is provided, but in the good old bad old days, you might have to go to 4 or 5 different locations, 4 or 5 different spots, make 10 different email contacts to get all the answers you need. Now, as of right after Canada Day on the 2nd of July, the one-stop development shop will be operational, and the idea is whether you're building a backyard deck that needs a permit or you're building a 12-story apartment high-rise, one phone number, one email or one door to walk through, and we guide you from there. And we help you through the morass of all sorts of requirements. Most of them are legitimate requirements. We need to manage our wastewater. There are environmental considerations. Traffic studies have to happen. So we're not trying to get rid of what's required. We're just going to make it way simpler for you to get through it all. That's the idea of the one-stop development shop. The community-wide, business-wide community improvement plan is basically a plan whereby in Ontario, you may not be aware, but it is actually illegal to incentivize businesses. You can't give them land at a discount price. You can't give them a cash bonus. You can't give them a tax exemption. It's all illegal. It's called bonusing, and it's not allowed at the municipal level unless you have a community improvement plan approved by your council that says why you're doing it, and that community plan, improvement plan has been reviewed by the Ministry of Housing, Municipal Affairs and Housing. So we took advantage of the unless. We now have a community improvement plan, so now we are allowed to encourage business to grow if they're already here, or encourage business to come here if they're not, because we can talk about incentives, tax rebates, land at discounted values, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the essence of it. It's way more complicated than that. It's been approved by council. It's gone to the ministry. We have not heard no from the ministry. So we're launched, and away we go.
Not to drag things out. Bringing back to one of the first things you said here today, which is that the community drives the community's growth itself. What can we do as members of the community, not within the administration or council, to help support the smart growth mandate?
Oh, Jeff, you are a great setup, man. Thank you for that. Ditch the negativity. Ditch it. I'm not saying we bury our heads in the sand on our problems. We'll deal with them. But the roads are horrible in Thunder Bay. If I had a nickel for every time I heard that, we wouldn't have a revenue problem. They're not horrible. We have a formal measuring scale, engineered, approved, that's used across Canada, and we're in the 7-point-somethings on our pavement condition index. Average. Not horrible. Average. We have work to do, to be sure. And we're still suffering from the spring thaw and potholes that will swallow cars right now. But the roads aren't horrible in Thunder Bay. I'll gladly take you to a city where they are horrible. But that's how we speak. So as community members, ditch the negativity, focus on the positivity, and we'll work our problems. That would be point one. Point two is, on top of being positive, everybody in the community can be an ambassador for the community. And there's an old adage or belief, it takes 10 good news stories to minimize one bad news story. We have bad news stories in this city. There's no doubt about it. Every city does. Can we not drown those things out a little bit with some good news stories? And there's lots of good news to be talking about. By the way, administration, and I would suggest council has a role to play in the exact same thing. Our staff reports are improving, but way too focused on the negative. And what do people like the media glom onto? Well, of course, they'll focus in on the negative. All right? Let's not ignore our problems, but let's speak positively about our city, and let's be good ambassadors for our city and encourage other businesses and residents to come here. That would be my key message. I could go on all afternoon on other things, but you set me up for it, so it's your fault that I talked about it.
So a question for if there's anything in the plan as far as helping local businesses attract talent. So I have never been able to attract, in 7 years, I've been able to bring one person from out of town to come work in Thunder Bay. So is there any definitive plan for helping businesses attract?
Do you want to take it, Jamie? Short answer is yes. There are and there will be more. We recognize that talent attraction is really a stumbling block for us. And finding good the workers that you need is a challenge. So there are a number of action items in it, and I think that the CEDC's next 5-year strategy, which is coming out in September, has a very strong emphasis on business growth, business opportunity, etc. And feel free to speak to the CEDC about that, all right? And by the way, it's tough actually to get a job here depending on what your skills are, because we don't necessarily embrace people who don't exactly fit the model that we want for an employee.
So I want to follow up on the question about affordability of housing. One of the failures of one of the federal governments was the cancellation of the programs that allowed for co-op housing and not-for-profit housing to be built. In the city's plan, are there any provisions for setting aside some of the parcels of land that are currently being advertised for development for this purpose? And are there any other incentives that would encourage a not-for-profit for developing rather than the city?
Short answer is yes. We already give preferential treatment or preferential consideration to not-for-profits who want to buy lands that we have available, and that will continue. Our incentive programs, and we have many of them through the Housing Accelerator Fund, etc., give many extra points in terms of the selection criteria for affordable housing. So they already have a leg up in those two areas. One thing that I think is important to recognize, the municipality itself does not do housing. We are not the service manager for housing. We have a DSAB, right? So they do affordable housing, transitional and supportive housing. We do market value incentivization. But in our incentivization, we have an absolute focus on affordable housing. And I don't believe there's a single affordable housing request that has met the criteria that we have not satisfied in the last 12 months.
I just have a question around affordable housing, because I don't think DSAB deals with affordable housing. I think they deal with low-income housing, and affordable is actually something else, and I've been looking for the actual explanation for affordable housing.
Yeah, I mean, pull up 5 documents, you'll find 5 different definitions of affordable housing. We basically tie it to income, and it's we're still using what is probably the most common guideline, which is no more than 30% of your income towards housing for it to be affordable. Yeah, I probably spoke in too broad of terms. DSAB's focuses on supportive and transitional housing and social housing kind of things. But they also play a role in helping with enable those who wish to do affordable housing. And we play a significant role, again, through our incentive program in terms of incentivizing those who have affordable housing projects. Again, I believe we have funded every affordable housing thing that has met our criteria in the last 12 months. We have given incentive money to them because it's that important. Last one, I think. Charlotte? Yeah?
Thank you. I have a specific question regarding healthcare system, like talent supply. So I'm about to graduate from UCAD University with MBA program, and I'm lucky to work for a staffing agency in town to supply nurses across Northern Ontario, because most of the time there are challenges there. So what we do is not only about arbitrage, we really try to bring cultural awareness, because most of the candidates we bring are from South Ontario. So we try to build cultural awareness, and we have certain kind of training to make sure they are more suitable in the northern community. So my question is like from the city level, what actions would you take to promote this talent supply? Thank you.
When it comes to healthcare, anything to do with healthcare, the city's role is one of advocacy, and that's where it stops. We don't run any programs. We don't really do any funding. We advocate on behalf of various healthcare initiatives to the federal and provincial governments. That's the role of the city. To be quite blunt, as much as we may wish to help, it's kind of like a number of other social challenges that we have. It would bankrupt a city to get involved in that in any meaningful way, both in terms of time and in terms of money. I want to remind everybody in this room, in terms of every tax dollar that's collected in Canada, across the board, HST, trade tariffs, sales tax, everything, levies, of every tax dollar that's income tax, of every tax dollar that's collected in Canada, 8 cents makes it to the municipal level. The other 92 cents is at the provincial and federal level. We have, as much as we would want to get involved, perhaps, we don't have the time, the resources, the people, because that costs money, or the money to fund those sorts of, any of that sort of stuff. And it's a pretty firm line in the sand we have to hold. We do not enter into the health care domain other than advocacy. And whenever an element of the healthcare domain comes to the city and says, we have a problem, can you help us advocate to the province? Watch how fast our council and the Intergovernment Affairs Committee gets involved in that stuff. Happy to advocate, we just can't be leading those sorts of projects. And with that, here we are.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So as we conclude today's session, once again, I'd like to thank John Collin for taking the time to speak with us and to take our questions. Thanks also to our series sponsor, Intercity Industrial Supply, today's event sponsor, the Thunder Bay Real Estate Board, and the Da Vinci Center staff for the great food and service. And before you go, the Chamber has some more great opportunities coming up to engage and connect with other business professionals. The Chamber is hosting the 39th Annual Golf Classic, August 12th at Whitewater Golf Club. Teams are almost sold out, but there are still opportunities for sponsors and prize donors. And the Chamber is pleased to announce the Small Business Solutions Summit on October 22nd at the Superior Inn. The new event will empower entrepreneurs to thrive in our economy and inspire small business owners and entrepreneurs. For more information, or to register, you could visit the Chamber's website. So thank you very much, everyone, for your participation, and I hope you have a great afternoon.
And sorry, I do need to make one paid commercial announcement. This was really one-way information today with a couple questions. If you have thoughts, if you have ideas, if you have additional questions, go to the Get Involved webpage. If you don't like Get Involved, send us an email. We value the dialogue. So please engage as you wish. Thank you very much.